Well, it looks like Richard Dawkins is back in the news, and not for a fun reason, like tweeting about dogs 69ing. I don't talk about him often, but I'm pretty sure every time I do, I have to bring that up because, sorry, top 10 tweet of all time, hands down. Anyway, no, he's back in the news because he went on TV and declared that he's a cultural Christian, which has some people shocked for a few reasons. For instance, some evangelical Christians were shocked because they're morons and they think that this means the world's most famous living atheist now believes in God, which he doesn't. Other people are shocked because they didn't realize that Dawkins has been saying this kind of thing forever. Despite the fact that I found this announcement very obvious and unsurprising, I still want to talk about it because it does tie into some interesting ideas that I think are worth keeping in mind. It all happened on LBC, a British commercial news station, where Dawkins sat down in conversation with Boris Johnson's sister. That truly is a very tiny island, isn't it? Anyway, Dawkins sat down with Rachel Johnson on Easter to discuss whether or not it matters that Christianity isn't that big of a deal anymore. He wastes absolutely no time saying the quiet part loud.
And what would be your Easter message? I mean, I've said a few things. What would you tell the nation?
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer. But there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. So I count myself a cultural Christian. I think it would matter if we substituted any alternative religion. That would be truly dreadful.
What's his Easter message? That Ramadan shouldn't be promoted instead of Easter. Okay, thanks, Grandpa. That's basically the entire short interview. Christianity is great, while Islam is horrible. Don't get Dawkins wrong. Everything Christians believe is dumb and wrong and stupid, but boy, is it great otherwise. Before I go any further, allow me to admit that, much like Richard Dawkins, I too am a cultural Christian. That just means I grew up in a Christian household within a Christian society. I spent my formative years believing in the Christian mythology and also attending church and Sunday school and youth group, teaching at vacation Bible school every summer, reading the Bible, singing hymns, celebrating Easter and Christmas, saying grace before meals, playing in the basketball and softball leagues that the local churches ran. I mean, Christianity was an essential part of my life, and therefore it is still an essential part of who I am today, despite the fact that I am no longer actually a Christian. And because of that, that is why, for instance, I love Christmas way more than I could ever love Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Solstice or Festivus, because of deeply embedded positive memories of Christmas growing up. The difference between me and Richard Dawkins in this respect is that when I say I'm a cultural Christian, I am acknowledging an irrational bias inside of me. There's nothing that inherently makes Christmas a better, more beautiful, or more wholesome holiday than those other ones. In fact, objectively speaking, as an anti-capitalist, there's a lot about Christmas that is pretty unsavory. But my implicit bias remains. I love Christmas. Dawkins, meanwhile, uses the term cultural Christian not to explore or interrogate his internal biases, but to excuse them. He doesn't just prefer a cathedral to a mosque because that's what he grew up with. He invents a post hoc rationalization to explain that he prefers cathedrals because they're better in some way than mosques. They're more beautiful, they're more moral, they're more human. In that vein, the two of them, Dawkins and Johnson, set up what may appear at first blush to be a really obvious and stupid straw man. In Europe, Christianity is on the decline and Islam is growing. Therefore, it's not just that people are celebrating Ramadan, but that they are celebrating Ramadan instead of Easter. It's not just that they're building mosques, it's that they are tearing down or threatening to tear down cathedrals and chapels and erect mosques in their place. Now, this isn't true. At least it doesn't appear to be true in the UK, where Johnson and Dawkins are. In the 2021 census, the percentage of people who said they're Christian did drop from 59 to 46%, but Islam only rose from 5 to 6.7%. No religion, meanwhile, jumped from 24.7% to 36.7%. So if anything, the problem would be replacing cathedrals with not mosques, but libraries, I guess. It's such a strange argument to put forth with zero evidence. And so you might wonder why they went with this until you realize that Dawkins and Johnson are actually just floating the Great Replacement theory, a white nationalist conspiracy theory that exists to frighten white people into thinking that Black and brown immigrants are going to take over their culture, destroy their way of life, and start treating white people the way white people already treat Black and brown immigrants. Now, hold on, you might say. Maybe they're just using wildly inappropriate language to discuss a problem that doesn't exist, and they accidentally sound like Nazis. Well, have I got great news for you, an entire bonus video in which I carefully spell out the history of this particular Nazi talking point from a generation before Hitler straight up to Richard Dawkins urging his fans to buy and read a book by far-right bigot Douglas Murray that's about how the Great Replacement theory is real. So yes, Richard Dawkins has very publicly endorsed this white supremacist talking point in the past. When I first became an atheist, I absolutely bought into the idea that religion was responsible for most, if not all, societal ills like misogyny and racism and homophobia. Luckily, I had Richard Dawkins as a mentor to look up to, and he quickly disabused me of that notion, even before he used the plight of an imaginary Muslim woman to try to tell me to shut up and let atheist men grope me a little bit because it's not so bad. He clearly sees Christianity the same way he saw Islam in that example, as a tool that he can use for his own benefit, to spread his own biases, to secure the supremacy of his own race and culture and gender and sexuality over that of others. Interestingly, this places Dawkins perfectly in line with American Christian nationalists. He does have to dismiss the American evangelical Christians in this particular interview because he can't let on that he doesn't actually care about how those people are brutalizing women and trans people and people of color here in America, and they are attempting to do the same thing in the UK. But in reality, he does hold the exact same position as they do, that the God and the Jesus of the Bible are mythical figures, and it doesn't really matter what they did or didn't say or do or believe. Feed the poor, love your neighbor, welcome the stranger into your home. Who gives a shit? What ultimately matters is using Christianity to control the sheep, frightening them into taking up arms against the enemy and defending their precious way of life from the subhumans. The Venn diagram between Christian nationalists and white nationalists is almost a perfect circle for a reason. Dawkins doesn't need to believe in the God to find allies in the religion. That's why Dawkins hasn't had a problem endorsing American Christian evangelicals in the past, like in 2019 when he encouraged his followers to attend a conference put on by a group called Sovereign Nations, a far-right Christian nationalist organization that hates wokeness as much as Dawkins does. It's worth noting, too, that another prominent atheist has gone one step slightly further than Dawkins on this account. Ayaan Hirsi Ali. She recently came out as a Christian in a 2,000 plus word essay that does not once mention Christ or Jesus or any explanation that would reveal that she now actually believes in any kind of God. Her only reason for now calling herself a Christian is, she says, because Western civilization is under threat from the communists of China and Russia, and from Islam, and from woke ideology. Faith in a God is not actually a prerequisite any longer for this particular version of Christianity, because it exists purely as a political tool to be wielded by those who benefit from the status quo, whether they were born into the wealthy white Western straight cis male hegemony, or whether they have been able to, at least temporarily, exist in close proximity and become useful to that hegemony and thus benefit from it. Donald Trump, Karl Rove, Dick Cheney, Richard Dawkins, and even Ayaan Hirsi Ali, they are all united on this fact. Cultural Christians who are desperate to retain supremacy and willing to use religion to do it despite not actually believing in all that silly, supernatural, omnipotent being stuff. So that's all I wanted to say about that. I just saw a lot of reactions of surprise for something that should not be surprising at this point in time. Richard Dawkins is a bigot, and he loves his bigotry more than he hates religion. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.